It was our first time going on a ski trip together, and I was so excited. Joe, my best friend since kindergarten, had organized the whole thing. He had found the perfect chalet for us to all stay in, and had even convinced our other friends, Mike and Sarah, to join us. The drive up to the mountains was full of laughter and anticipation. The snow-covered trees and winding roads made the scenery feel like we were in a winter wonderland. I couldn't wait to hit the slopes and experience the thrill of skiing for the first time. As we arrived at the chalet, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It was a cozy wooden cabin with a large stone fireplace in the middle of the living room. The windows were covered in snow, making it feel like we were truly isolated from the rest of the world. But as the night went on, things started to feel a little off. There was an eerie silence in the air, and the shadows from the fireplace seemed to dance in a threatening manner. I brushed it off as my nerves and excitement getting the better of me. After a delicious dinner, we decided to relax by the fire and watch some movies. But as we were getting comfortable, I noticed something strange outside. It looked like a figure standing in the shadows, watching us through the window. I gasped and pointed it out to the others, but when we turned to look, it was gone. We decided to brush it off as a trick of the light and continue with our movie night. But as the night went on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked outside, I could swear I saw someone or something lurking in the darkness. As we got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I decided to sleep with the lights on, and I could hear my friends giggling at my irrational fear. But I couldn't help it, something just felt wrong. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a loud banging on the door. I looked around and realized my friends were fast asleep. I cautiously got out of bed and crept towards the door. I peered through the peephole, but there was no one there. I assumed it was just the wind and went back to bed. But just as I was about to drift back to sleep, I heard a low whispering coming from outside the door. I sat up in bed, frozen in fear. I couldn't make out what the whispers were saying, but they sounded menacing and foreign. I woke up my friends, and we huddled together in the living room, trying to make sense of what was happening. And that's when we noticed something strange. The fireplace, which had been blazing just a few hours ago, was now completely out. And the firewood that we had stacked neatly by the fireplace was now scattered all over the room. It was as if someone had purposely knocked it over. We were all on edge, but we were convinced it was just a prank. Someone must have snuck in while we were sleeping and messed with us. We decided to ignore it and try to get some sleep. But just as we were starting to doze off, we heard the windows creaking open. Sarah let out a blood-curdling scream as she pointed to the figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and slender, dressed in all black, with a sinister grin on its face. We all screamed and ran to the door, frantically trying to get out of the chalet. But as we reached for the door handle, we realized it was locked from the outside. We were trapped. We turned around to face the figure, and that's when we saw its eyes. They were glowing a bright red, and they seemed to be looking right through us. We were frozen in fear, and I could feel my heart racing as the figure slowly approached us. And then, as if out of nowhere, the figure disappeared, and we were left standing in the silence of the empty chalet. We quickly packed our things and made a run for it. We didn't look back until we were miles away from the chalet. As we sat in the car, trying to catch our breath, we realized that we had stumbled upon something evil in the mountains. Something we were not meant to see. To this day, I still can't explain what happened on that ski trip. Some say it was just our imaginations running wild, but I know what I saw. And I will never forget the terror I felt that night in the chalet. The memory haunts me every time I close my eyes. But one thing's for sure, I will never go back to that chalet. And I will think twice before going on a ski trip again. Sometimes, the most beautiful sights hide the darkest secrets. And the mountains are no exception. Growing up, my family was never one for winter activities like skiing or snowboarding. But when my friends invited me to join them on a ski trip during our winter break, I couldn't say no. I was excited for the adventure and the opportunity to try something new. We arrived at the ski resort and I was immediately blown away by the snow-covered mountains and the buzzing atmosphere. My friends were experienced skiers, but I was a complete novice. They promised to teach me the basics and I couldn't wait to hit the slopes. The first day was spent on the bunny hill, where my friends patiently taught me how to put on my skis and move my feet to control my speed. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to learn. By the end of the day, I was proud of myself for successfully making it down the hill without any major wipeouts. The next day, we moved on to the more advanced slopes. I was a bit nervous, but my friends assured me that I was ready. As we made our way up on the ski lift, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and fear. The higher we went, the colder it got and the wind started to pick up. We finally reached the top and I was in awe of the breathtaking view. My friends quickly strapped on their skis and zoomed down the slope. I hesitated for a moment, taking in the beauty around me before following suit. As I descended, I focused on my form and tried to remember the techniques my friends had taught me. But suddenly, my skis hit a patch of ice and I lost control. I tumbled down the slope, my skis flying off, and ended up in a heap at the bottom. My friends rushed over to check on me, relieved to find that I was okay. I brushed off the snow and laughed at how ridiculous I must have looked. But then, one of my friends noticed something strange. "Hey, where's your ski?" I looked around but couldn't find it anywhere. I must have lost it during my fall. We searched the surrounding area, but it was getting dark and we couldn't locate the ski. I reluctantly gave up and figured we would find it in the morning. That night, we settled into our cabin and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The cabin was cozy and warm, but I couldn't help but notice the eerie silence outside. It was as if the howling winds had died down and there wasn't a single animal or human in sight. We decided to play some board games to pass the time, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept wandering back to the missing ski. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something sinister was lurking in the darkness outside. As the night went on, the winds picked up again and started to sound like whispers, as if someone or something was trying to communicate with us. My friends laughed it off, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I was jolted awake by a loud banging noise. I sat up and looked around the cabin, but my friends were fast asleep. I slowly got out of bed and made my way to the window. My breath caught in my throat as I saw something in the distance. In the moonlight, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods, its eyes glowing red. I couldn't make out any other features, but I could feel it staring directly at me. I quickly shut the curtains and crawled back into bed, trying to shake off the terror that was building inside me. The next morning, I woke up to find that one of my friends was missing. She hadn't come back to the cabin from her early morning run. We searched the surrounding area, but we couldn't find her anywhere. We called the resort's emergency line and they sent out a search party, but the snow had covered any footprints that could lead us to her. That's when I remembered my missing ski. I had an uneasy feeling that the two were connected somehow. Could the figure in the woods be responsible? My heart raced as I tried to piece together what was happening. As the search continued, we received word that another person had gone missing. This time, it was one of the staff members who worked at the resort. Panic set in as we realized that there was something sinister happening on this ski trip. We packed our bags and left the resort, too scared to stay any longer. As we drove away, we saw that the figure at the edge of the woods was still there, watching us with its red eyes. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that it was responsible for the disappearances. To this day, I still have nightmares about that ski trip. I never found out what happened to my missing ski or my missing friend. But one thing's for sure, I will never go on a winter trip again. The cold and snow may be beautiful, but there's something else lurking in those mountains. Something evil. It was supposed to be a fun ski trip with my friends. We had been planning it for months and couldn't wait to hit the slopes. We arrived at the ski resort in the evening and settled into our cozy cabin. The snow-covered mountains were breathtaking and we were all excited for the next day. But as the night went on, I couldn't shake off this eerie feeling. It was like someone was watching me. I brushed it off as my imagination and went to bed. The next morning, we woke up to a winter wonderland. The sun was shining and the snow was perfect for skiing. We spent the whole day on the slopes, laughing and having a great time. But as the day turned into night, the uneasiness crept back. We decided to have a campfire outside our cabin. We roasted marshmallows and told scary stories. That's when one of my friends, Sarah, mentioned the legend of the abandoned ski lodge. Apparently, there was a tragic accident that happened there many years ago. A group of skiers went missing and were never found. Locals say their spirits still haunt the lodge. I laughed it off, but deep down, I was a little scared. As we were getting ready for bed, Sarah kept talking about the abandoned lodge. She was convinced we should go check it out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We snuck out of our cabin and made our way towards the abandoned lodge. The wind was howling and the trees were creaking. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. When we finally reached the lodge, the moon was the only source of light. We cautiously made our way inside. The inside of the lodge was dark and musty. We explored the rooms, but there was nothing scary about it. That's when we heard a loud banging noise. We froze in fear. It sounded like it was coming from upstairs. We slowly made our way up, with Sarah leading the way. As we reached the top of the stairs, the banging noise stopped. But then we heard footsteps coming towards us. We turned around, but there was no one there. We were all screaming and freaking out. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. We ran out of the lodge as fast as we could and didn't stop until we were back in our cabin. We didn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, we packed our bags and left the ski resort. We never spoke of that night again. I don't know what it was that we saw in that abandoned lodge. But one thing is for sure, I will never go on a ski trip again. Because sometimes, the scariest horrors are the ones that are real.